No worries, dude.
Many qualities for you to dislike.
I'm vengeance.
Good evening. Welcome back to the Stood Up Geek Pick podcast. I'm Low from California. We got our man Dibes, Amanda down below, and our special guest Formal from the Formal Review. 24 hours away from the Batman, the monumentous occasion, celebration of the Cape Crusader. And on this channel, we are doing this road to the Batman. This is the second installment of the series. We're looking at third installment. We're looking at Chinatown versus Taxi Driver and how it will help us lead into the thematic and cinematic qualities of the Batman. Formal, how you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing good. I'm ready to see the Batman. It's a little bit more than 24 hours for me, but
oh yeah. No, me and Dad are spoiled rotten. We got less than 24 hours for us. It's about maybe 20-ish for me. So
what is this?
Amanda,
I'm the
what are you
only
seeing
one
about, man?
Thursday at 3:30 p.m.
Lame.
because
Lame.
I know.
so then out of the four of us, I'm the last one seeing it.
All right,
gotta
we
wait
got some
till-
people
wait
in the
till
house.
7.
Matt Wyatt, what's up, man? Seeing the Batman tomorrow, just like me and Dives.
I'm jealous.
Love
I
it.
know.
And if you guys are new to this format for this cinema comparison for the Batman, we are doing a versus style comparison between the two films. We're gonna break it down with first. Is it first impressions, Dives?
Yeah, just general impressions of which one you want to start with first, Taxi Driver or Chinatown?
Let's do Taxi Driver.
Okay.
Go some with Scorsese, and I think we do visuals, story, rewatchability, and then overall grade, right?
Lord.
No, we were just doing first impressions, general impressions, and then we did how it ties into the Batman, and then grade.
Oh, okay.
And
Simplified
Batman.
version of the verses. Cool. So let's start off with 1976's classic from Martin Scorsese, Taxi Driver, starring Robert De Niro, written by Paul Schrader. Let's throw this down to Amanda. She's a big Marty fan. What are your just in general impressions about Taxi Driver as a film?
Okay, so the first time I watched it, I was a bit younger, and that was when I was like, Scorsese's pictures they're all fantastic. They're all 5 stars. They're all top tier. I really like the story. I love Robert De Niro as Travis Bickle. I thought it was a really interesting character. He kind of takes on this person who wants to clean up the streets basically on his own, and he sees all of these different people in the area, and he just takes it upon himself. Like, he wants to be his own hero basically in his own story. And it was interesting for the most part, and it is a bit slow, but then when I watched it again, for me, it just doesn't hold up to the first time I watched it, and it kind of lost its little luster, which sucks. Because I love Marty, I love Marty, but now it's like I'm really critical of what he's done. But again, Robert De Niro is always giving 110%. You have Harvey Keitel, you have a young Jodie Foster. Taxi Driver, just an interesting watch and a great character piece for Robert De Niro, and that's like my first impression, my takeaway of Taxi Driver.
That's a really interesting take, and especially for someone that didn't. I mean, obviously, a lot of us are younger than this generation. This film the generation that this film spoke to, obviously, we're all a lot younger, especially post-Vietnam and all that. And I think that was a topic of for a lot of 70s classic films and early 80s films of that, that post-war PTSD syndrome, how war life affects, not just the soldiers, but the communities around them. So, Formal, what about you, man? What do you think about Taxi Driver?
To an extent, like I agree with what Amanda was saying. I think that it's obviously a classic, and that's. But my biggest thing about it is I actually think it does hold up a lot.
Okay.
I don't think it's as slow as most people may. I just love it because it's really one of those movies that, and I think this will go into like kind of what we talk about with the Batman and like also what we talked about on Mask of Phantasm is that it ends kind of in this way that is it actually a happy ending, and it's also like the character that the main like protagonist of the story, he's not really a great guy to root for the entire movie. He's actually kind of crazy, but spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen it, it's one of those you don't know honestly if he's alive at the end or not, or if, and that's really up to interpretation. But at the same time, like even if it is, for example, even if it is real and he does make it out, you don't think his mental capacity could not be there. But then also at the same time, it's like we rooted for him to like beat up these like pimps and whatnot. But then like as a character, I mean, if he was just a little bit faster pulling out the gun, he could have shot a senator and he would have been thought of as a terrorist, honestly. And I think like that ideas of going back and forth, I think goes into what Amanda was saying as a character study. We're following him because that's the story, but it's not really a great person to follow. And it's not very heroic in any way, but we're also kind of rooting for him at the same time. And I love that just analytical side of it that for me, at least, it holds up very, very well.
Awesome. I know Dives wasn't the biggest fan, man. What were your thoughts on Taxi Driver?
No. All right, we're gonna get into it, but yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of the movie. We'll get to that in a little bit, but you know, I give it a lot of respect. I feel like this movie is all about loneliness, that like soul crushing loneliness of like how New York City just takes this introverted guy that deals with PTSD, has clear social anxiety, and just absolutely crushes his soul. It was really hard to kind of watch De Niro in this movie. He clearly just wants connections. He wants contact. He wants family. He wants a girlfriend. And you just kind of see him just, you know, live through the hardships of, you know, those dirty streets, the whores, the drugs, the porn in New York City of the 70s. Like, it almost like made me think how, you know, probably Vietnam was a lot better conditions than coming back to this type of jungle instead of that one. So for me, I respect the originality. Like, it's a very artistic film. Like you said, Formal, like the ending kind of shook me a little bit. Both movies actually did. Like, this was definitely a thought-provoking film where I'm like, is this guy a hero? Is he an anti-hero? You nailed it, Formal. Like, it really kind of asked that question, and it's a really complex answer. And it made me think, you know, I thought that last scene was really, really well done. But this movie had a lot to say. It was a slow burn. There's too many aerial shots, and I get why it's such an important film. But for me, it didn't all click. I like the other one better, but that's my general thoughts.
And you know what's funny, because I'm totally a film nerd, so I think it does kind of speak to that side of it. What's up, ACS Universe? Thanks for joining us. Yeah, I think the masterful, some of the shots, and I like Schrader's script. I like the voiceover with De Niro writing down his thoughts on paper, even though they're very like at first he seems pretty coherent, and then as it goes on, his thoughts are really like just either out there or just, you know, he's just all over the place. And I think that it's hard because his heart's in the right place, especially trying to take Jodie Foster out of that life that she's in. But at the same time, it's like, who asked him to do that? And who, especially for someone like her that was just trying to get away from where she was.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, who's to say that, you know, he could be the judge, jury, and executioner? And that also plays into, for whatever reason, I couldn't recall why he wanted to shoot the senator, but Because I thought he respected the center, so I was kind of confused on that concept of it. But I think it just shows that his mental instability didn't let him be the hero that he thought he was. For that matter, and I think that it's not a film that I would quickly go back to rewatch. Kind of like how Dives and Amanda said it doesn't hold up for her after rewatching it, and but as a first watch though, I think it's important, and especially for cinema fans, I think it's important. So with that being said, Dives, I'm gonna kick it right back to you, man. We have Wonder Meg in the house. Thanks for joining us. Dives, how do you think Taxi Driver is gonna play into the Batman?
Well, you kind of look at, I mean, just look at the poster. Like, the Batman's treating Gotham as its own character, just like we went and broke down with Batman Year One, how Gotham is taking a life of its own. I think Taxi Driver nailed that with New York and made New York almost a character of its own, which New York might have been the main character of this movie, to be honest. It just eats up Bickle to death. So for me, I think that's really the big takeaway, is how how vibrant and ominous and just soul crushing the backdrop is. And I think we're going to see that a lot with Gotham, how Reeves portrays Gotham in this. So I think that's a very, very clear similarity for me. You think about, who is to blame for Bickle's kind of descent into madness. It's probably New York. We saw kind of these like noble authority figures in this film, and are they to blame for the downfall of everything that's going on in New York? You hear Bickle complaining about how things are getting worse and worse in that town. So who is really to blame? Is it Bickle, or does it start at the top? And I think there's definitely similarities there with how we'll see Riddler go after authority figures and kind of tie everything in together with the Wayne family. So I think there's definitely some similarities.
What's interesting too is I think the way New York's portrayed, it always seems like a pretty rough city, or like a fast moving, if you don't keep your feet, it's going to sweep you away kind of thing. But never have I felt so gross. Like when he's in that theater, with the porn theater, and when he's just like walking the streets having diner at a diner with his cab buddies, it's like I feel dirty. Like I felt like after Taxi Driver, I wanted to take a shower. Like especially that little, is that a brothel of sorts, or like what do you call that building where they just do dirty deeds and whatever? And it just feels so gross. Like Amanda, I'm gonna kick it to you. How do you think Marty's classic will play into the Batman with its stylistic choices and thematic choices?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what Dibes is saying. It makes complete sense that the city becomes a character and completely engulfs and drives him to do make certain choices. So I think that's a massive parallel going into the Batman. I also think that just having Travis take it upon himself to fix everything is a huge parallel, and having everyone around him that like minor characters, but the supporting characters that are prominent to him in making those connections, similar to Bruce, whether it's Selina or him making like an encounter with Penguin or the Riddler. It's the fact that like he's still making these connections no matter how if they're villains or however you want to look at it, he still needs to make these connections and they affect him, and he wants to become the hero of his own story. It's kind of like placed upon him. So I agree with Dives was saying. The supporting characters, I think, are going to play a huge role in the Batman, and that affects his mentality, similar to Travis and similar to Bruce, and wanting to help people and like clean up the streets of Gotham and all of that. So I think like that's the massive parallel that I kind of I saw. And honestly, this is like sidebar, but watching Taxi Driver back, I'm like, so Todd Phillips completely ripped the Joker from this movie, and I didn't realize like how much he did rip it from there. But anyways, that's sidebar. But Martin Scorsese always uses New York as like a character, and I love that. And it shows, and Gotham's really similar. So I think Matt Reeves is going to play that for sure.
Yeah, no. Well, go ahead.
Should we assume, or should we think that maybe Bruce takes Selina to a porno film on their first date? Is that going to happen? Like, I heard Vicky Vale Does Dallas is a very good film.
Oh Lord,
I
But
don't know what's gonna happen, fam.
you know, Amanda and Dibes too. I love that you guys are touching on the city being a character, and I think that with a Batman story, I think Gotham 100% needs to have that same kind of impact. And I think I don't know if I want it to be as grimy as Taxi Driver because it makes me feel icky. But what do you think, Formal? How is this film gonna play into the Batman?
I think it like everything everyone said. We've also touched on like other things like in the other episodes, like when it comes to just like the grittiness of it, like going like touching base on the Joker point that Amanda brought up. Hilariously, I was watching this with my wife and she hadn't seen this movie before ever. But one of the reactions that I had when I came out of Joker, I was like, this is exactly like Taxi Driver. No one around me knew what I was talking about really. And then she watches it, she's like, yeah, you were right. Like complete 100, like it's just like it's so obvious.
God,
Nothing against Joker, like really in any way on that, but it's like it's really obvious like how the Joker character comes about. But I think like that also touches into like how Gotham is a character, like what you guys were saying, because I mean that's one thing that also the Nolan films touched on as well, is creating like a character behind the city, and then the Joker also did the same thing. And I think like when you take that type of, I guess, establishing the city as, I don't think it's going to be as grimy as the Taxi Driver was, mainly because it's a PG-13 movie. But there could be still like allusions to those types of things. And I think the way that Scorsese kind of filmed this movie was done in such a way that like keeps you very, I guess, even though obviously New York City is very big, it still keeps you kind of very small in a sense. And I think like that aspect of, you have this huge character above the city, but you're still focused on Bickle, even though he's kind of a crappy person. Or not crappy, that's probably not the best way to put that, but
I mean,
he makes different choices. Like that's all we can say.
it reminds me of like someone that probably like in the 70s maybe could have been diagnosed with like high functioning autism, and at the time that didn't exist. So I definitely got those vibes watching De Niro's Bickle character.
Right.
No, I love that you guys are playing into that, the him being a product of his environment, and in some manner of speaking, that's what Bruce Wayne is, right? I mean, literally Gotham City in metaphorically took away his parents, right? So it kind of created who he is. So Rob Christiansen is in the house. He says, could Batman Bruce Wayne be Travis's fantasy that Travis sees himself or wants to see himself, or seen by others as that hyper confident superhero? I think
absolutely
that's a very good point, because I think that Travis does want to be seen.
He does.
And I think he wants people to know he's helping, but obviously doesn't do it in the most appealing manner, so to say. And before we segue into best moments, I just want to say that I hope that the recklessness that Travis has, I hope that plays into Robert Pattinson's Batman a little bit, because I think it's kind of cool to see an inexperienced Batman that doesn't quite have it all together, that's kind of on the edge. And I think we've seen little bits and pieces of it in the trailers and teasers we've seen, where he's like almost losing himself and like, you know, just wrecking these bad guys. But at the same time, it's like there's a brutality to it that's like, it's almost like unhinged. And I think that's a kind of Bruce Wayne that would be exciting to see. So going into best moments, I loved Travis's obsession with guns. My favorite scene is like him just loading up, hiding all the guns in the certain places, and he saws off that drawer rail that he puts in his wrist so he can do a quick draw. That was pretty awesome. I would have never thought in my mind of how to saw that off and make it work and fit in my jacket coat the way he did, but that was pretty cool. And then he has the big 45 holster, and he's posing in the mirror and stuff like that. It's kind of like a Walmart version of Batman. You know, he stocked up on the tools. He just didn't have the millions that Bruce Wayne had at his disposal. So I thought for his weaponry, I thought that was pretty cool. Dibs, I'm gonna kick it to you, man. What were your favorite moments from Taxi Driver?
The gunfight at the end was pretty freaking awesome. There's like complete absence of sound in this scene. It was very real. Like for like a 70s movie, it was really graphic. It felt very real, very raw. And I love how the fact that like even up to this point and throughout this scene, like you don't feel like Bickle is this like dominantly hero character. Even the girl he's trying to save, Jodie Foster's in the corner screaming her lungs out and not like reacting positively to his presence there whatsoever. So like it made me sympathize weirdly for Travis's character even more. Like, and it just goes back to what I said about how like it's society's impact on him that really was his downfall for me. So I thought that was a really memorable moment. Like that was graphic. Like that was a really well done scene. Especially at the end where he like just sits back and tries to like blow his brains out. It was unsuccessful, but in the end, because of society, he's now looked at as a hero. So really interesting ending to this film.
What about you, Formal? What was some of your favorite moments?
So I agree with what Dives was saying. I like that scene a lot. And it was so interesting about it is that is the toned down version, because like how Scorsese like originally like
Really?
I think like it was too bloody, so they were gonna rate it NC-17, so they had to like decolor it a little bit to make it not look as graphic. But it ended up being like even more, I think personally, like more impactful that way. Like you said, I won't take too much from that. But I think like one thing, because I love everything about this when it comes to just like the colors and like just how the movie is filmed. But the one moment for me that really stuck out was the music this time around. And I think like having also listened to the at the time I had only listened to like the first 3 tracks of the Batman, the score. And I think like some of the music is so similar to the Catwoman theme that they put out. And I think like I don't know why, but it sounded exactly the same. And it obviously got me more excited for the Batman just based on just the music alone. But I really, really loved that little bit. And it was just, I don't know, it's just kind of in a way touching on like how like film noir, one of the reasons that I think Matt Reeves basically brought up is that like a lot of these films influenced his ultimate project. So if the music based on just those 3 tracks, I've listened to it, but I'm not going to go into that here. But I think that there's a lot that can come from that and just the music. So I think that was just something that like I really loved on this time around that I didn't really hit me before. But yeah,
I gotta check that out, man. Me and Dives, we're both suckers for scores, so I want to hear that theme again, man. How about you, Amanda? Your favorite moments?
I absolutely love the end scene. I think that aerial shot, just like tracking through the hallway, is like perfect. And I studied that in school.
Cool.
And I only saw like that part. So then watching it in context, I was like, oh my God, like it looks so good. And I feel like early Scorsese, like he's just really experimental with his work. And then he just kind of like honed in and polished it later on. So that's why like I love watching Mean Streets, especially. I think Mean Streets is a tad bit better than Taxi Driver, but that's a side note. But yeah, I think that it's more experimental and I love that. For me, what I connected with, and it's so memorable, is Travis sitting in the theater and he's all by himself. And previously he was like writing in his diary, like, I'm up all hours of the night. I'm by myself. You could feel like how disconnected he is from everyone around him. And he's by himself sitting in that theater watching, whatever was on screen. And he's sitting there like it's a regular film. It's a regular film. He's sitting there like he does the eye thing, like there in the framing and all of that. And it's like one of my favorite scenes because you just sit with who he is. Like he doesn't talk at all. You just have that like previous notion of like he's up all hours of the day. He's by himself. He's there. You're in his head, just sitting there watching that. And I think like that was a moment for me.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I actually forgot to mention that. I think the insomnia part to his character is something that is just, if people don't know this, I mean, like lack of sleep can do crazy things to a person. I think Fight Club touched that as well. Are you pointing at yourself?
Yeah, because I have insomnia sometimes. That's
sorry to hear that. Yeah,
if I'm out of it,
here.
now you know.
No, it definitely affects one's personality, and I know that I pulled an all-nighter once, and I was not my bright and cheery self the next morning, to say the least. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and break this down with a final grade. I'll kick it back to you, Formula. What would you grade this as a whole? This film.
I mean, I'll just say it quick, short and easy. But 5 out of 5 for me, so 10 out of 10. But that's just me.
High praise, high praise. I think for a first watch, it was 100% an 8 for me. And I think the only thing that keeps it from being a masterpiece of that caliber is that, again, I don't know how often I'm going to rewatch this film, but I do. There's a lot of the technical stuff that I would like to revisit. For example, Amanda, that aerial shot that Tarantino very much likes to emulate and use in his films like Kill Bill and Inglourious Basterds. He has very similar shots that's like, I see where you got that from, but he notoriously steals from everyone. He admits it. I think he has a quote, he steals from every movie ever made, and it's like kind of funny, kind of like, Anyways, I'll give it like an 8. I think, I don't know how often I don't know how many times I'll rewatch this movie, but what about you, Devs?
I'm in the same boat. I give it an 8. It's an incredibly deep, immersive, thought-provoking film. I think I went into this. This was my first watch, and I went into this thinking like De Niro was gonna blow me away. And this movie has really good direction, has really good acting, especially from De Niro, but it wasn't up to here that I was expecting. And going into both of these films as first-time viewing, I expected it to be the exact opposite. I expected it to be Chinatown to be the one down here and Taxi Driver to be way up here. It was the exact 180 of that. For me, it's an 8. It's just a very well done film. I can't deny that. But it was, I guess, not for me. It wasn't as good or legendary I was expecting. And I think it speaks to the times as well. Like, this is such an important film for modern filmmaking. It's a movie that like represents that speaks to a lot of people during that time period, and I don't have that, so unfortunately, so for me, it's an 8.
To your point, especially not that De Niro gave a bad performance, but I think that they one up themselves with doing Raging Bull. Scorsese and De Niro teaming back up, I think, and especially his performance there as Jake LaMotta, I think, is a little bit up from where he was with Travis Bickle. But Queen Manda, what about you? What's your overall grade for Taxi Driver?
I'm at an 8 out of 10 as well. I originally had it as like 10 like 5 years ago, and like now, like watching it back, the pacing is the one thing that just it wasn't right for me. And then if I look at it like with the rest of his filmography, I also won't go back to watch it, like you said, Lo. So it's definitely an 8 out of 10. But yeah, if you haven't watched Cape Fear, another Scorsese De Niro pairing, that's golden. So good.
That's I enjoy that a lot more than Taxi Driver. Right? I'm sorry, Cape Fear.
I do too. It's fantastic. That thing blew my mind, literally.
Yeah, 100% agree.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's that's De Niro in like full villain mode, and I think that's a role he just kills. But with that being said, let's jump back to our other 70s classic, Roman Polanski's Chinatown. I believe that was 1974, right, Formal? Somebody vet that for me. 74? Anyway, starring Jack Nicholson and Faye Dunaway. We also have a brief appearance from Burt Young, who played Paulie in the Rocky films. I'm gonna kick off this first impressions here. I'm a sucker for film noir. I got Bogey on my wall, Double Indemnity, Sunset Boulevard, all the classic noirs. I kind of grew up just in high school, especially coming out of film class. I just dived into that world. It's so seedy and grimy. I love a good gumshoe. I love a good, sitting back in the office. A dame walks in, he's smoking the cigarette. Like, all right, what you got for me? Okay, you want me to follow this person? And then Jack Nicholson was made for this role, especially with his finely tailored suits. And I think the interesting thing about Polanski here is that, traditionally noir is black and white, and it's dark and it's shadows and it's like a lot of that type of cinematography. But for Polanski, it was interesting that he chose a very bright setting for this picture. Jack Nicholson's suits pop. Most of his detective work is in the daytime, broad daylight, looking at the deserts of LA that I didn't realize existed way back then. And then you contrast it to where we end up, because it's interesting that the film is called Chinatown, but Chinatown's in the movie for like 10 minutes. But when we do get there, it's just the way that we build the anticipation and the feeling of being in Chinatown. When we get to that ending and it's like, oh, and everything happens, it's like, that's what we were building towards. And that's what made Chinatown, it was almost like Voldemort. Like, Jack Nicholson was like scared to talk about Chinatown, or he didn't want to talk about Chinatown. He just, it's a bad place. It's something you don't speak of. You know, that's what it felt like. And I think Clancy did an excellent job with this. I'm in agreement with you, Dives. I kind of enjoyed this a little bit more than Taxi Driver, but I also think that this film was more my speed, so to say. So let me kick this down to Amanda.
Yeah.
How did you like Chinatown?
So first impressions, I'm not really like in with like film noir. Like I watched it, I had to study it and all that stuff. Like but I was so impressed with this. I was so impressed with Chinatown. I was impressed with Jack Nicholson. It's Uncle Jack. Like, how can you not? And I love his early work too. He really took some risks with the characters that you know, and the roles that he took. But the story is just so well crafted. And I think that's really important when you are trying to like, wouldn't say like reinvent the genre, but just add your own like twist to it. And I think that that was really awesome in the 70s to kind of present that in a different way, like you said, Loretto. But yeah, first impressions, I was like, damn, who is Faye Dunaway and why is she a bombshell and why do I love her so much? Because she stole the damn movie. She,
Really?
the femme, like for me, she stole the movie. I thought she was incredible. And I loved her and I was just like glued to her while I was watching it. But yeah, I think for me, in regards to like neo-noir or film noir, like I just think that the story has to be rich. And I think that they really did a great job with Chinatown for that.
I love that you bring that up, Amanda, because film noir is notorious for its twists and turns. And I think that the deeper we got into this, because you keep thinking you know what's going on, and then it takes a turn, and you're like, wait a minute, and then it takes another turn, and it's like, whoa, this person is not who I think it is. And I think if you look femme fatale in the dictionary, you'll see Faye Dunaway with her little pistol and her blonde hair and her red lips and her big eyes. Like she is a quintessential femme fatale. She just lures you in because you want to think she's trustworthy. You want to think, you know, she's okay. But there's like, you peel back the layers and there's so much more to her. Formal, are you still with us?
Oh man,
can you hear us?
No.
Testing.
Yeah, he's got me some technical issues. He's back. Wait, he's muted.
Oh, wait. We got Real James in the house. Thanks for joining us, James. I agree. I am a huge Zoe Kravitz fan. I would love if she got her own film. But are you back with us, Formal? We good?
Yeah, I'm good. Good.
All right, cool, man. Hey, so what was your general thoughts and first impressions of Chinatown, man?
So I'm in the same boat as you, Lo, when it comes to noir films. I love like this aesthetic. Honestly, like when I was rewatching this, is like I feel that this is just like classic cinema. Like honestly, just watching it, just the feel of it, just everything about it just screamed to me classic film. Like there's I don't even really know how else to explain that. And I think like this is at the top when it comes to Polanski films, outside of any controversy that he has. I think like obviously he made a really, really, really fantastic film. And I think that going into I second what Amanda said about like the femme fatale and everything. Like I love every little bit of this film. I think like there's just a little bit of stuff here and there which we can talk about in a little bit, but Jack Nicholson as this character, it's really interesting to see, like honestly in general, just young Jack Nicholson, like watching like these older films, like anything basically before the 1989 Batman, like anything before that he is honestly a very different actor in general. It's like he was doing more, he wasn't I guess as crazy as like he ended up like kind of like the characters that he ended up playing. He was a little bit just more like all about like acting. Like I think around this time was also One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and everything. And then like obviously we have Joker, and then like and then obviously if you just as a random movie, Anger Management, he's like kind of this very, I guess, out there. He always plays these out there characters.
Yeah.
Well, like these characters, like early on in his career, are a lot more grounded, and it's really, I think, lovely to go back and like watch these older films that have him like as just like a low key, but also fantastic actor.
Yeah. Totally agree with that.
And I think there's a charm to young Jack that's like
Absolutely.
it's like, again, I'm breaking down dictionary definitions. If I looked up
love them.
devilishly handsome,
Yes.
he looks devilishly handsome. He's very very, he's got the nose, the sharp eyes, the jawline. It's
love
amazing,
him.
especially in the suit. Mwah, he looks like a boss.
I just love him.
I'm so sorry, Christian. I didn't see you in the chat earlier. Hello.
Heyo.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us. And I think visually, Chinatown won't play into the Batman as much as stuff like Taxi Driver or even like Mask of the Phantasm, to go back to our very first episode where we did this Road to the Batman. But I think the detective work is what really separates this film from the others. And I think that, I don't know how deep Robert Pattinson's going to get with like getting into his clues, and I don't expect him to be physically dusting for prints, but I'm kind of curious that side of the film that I feel like the trailers haven't really conveyed that. Matt Reeves mentioned it being more detective based, but I think at least the trailers I've seen, I haven't seen a lot of that. We just see a lot of the big set pieces, and of course Zoe Kravitz, who is lovely. Let me kick this to Dives. I mean, you're a guy, you've been aching to see the world's greatest detective on screen, like done properly well. So what are your expectations for how Chinatown can help influence the Batman?
Well, I got skipped about general impressions for Chinatown. Loretto
and then segue us into that. Sorry.
Yeah, Loretto literally just said, he just goes, forget it, Dives, it's Chinatown. That's
nice. I see what you did there. I'm so sorry. But yeah, do your general impressions and then bring us into the how it relates to the Batman.
I'm just all right. Real quick, like young Jack Nicholson. How do you not start off with that? Like, I love how much charisma and presence that guy has. Every single scene for me, I thought he stole it. I like the bandages on his nose. I thought that kind of like almost became a thing of itself, like watching it as the movie progressed. That was really interesting. I thought the writing was really good. I thought the camera work was really, really good. You nailed it. Like, this was like, Loretto, this is like an onion, like just, you can peel back the layers and layers and layers. And I really, really enjoyed it. I agree Formal wholeheartedly. Like, this felt like I was watching old school Hollywood, and it was really well done. And I really appreciated the slow burn. And that ending really messed me up. Like that, the movie ended, and that's when I really fell in love with this film. It made me think of like what the message was, and we're going to get into it. It's just this sick, twisted masterpiece. And I really, really went into this film like thinking it was going to be okay. I'm interested to see what Jack Nicholson looked like back then. Again, this was my first viewing. It blew me away. Absolutely blew me away. This is an awesome film. For how I think this is going to tie into the Batman, obviously you start with those onion layers. You start with those conspiracies. I think what the Riddler has Batman and Gordon going through as the movie progresses with these clues and riddles, and understanding more of the crime and corruption that exists within Gotham. I think that's a big piece of what we're going to see with Batman as the movie progresses and so forth. I think that's a pretty clear time.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, definitely. I'm gonna go into my favorite moments about it later, but there's so many little things that Jack Nicholson did detective wise that I thought were so clever, and they're subtle too. Like if you blink, you miss it, but it's like like leaving that watch underneath the car, and then he timed when it got ran over, so then he knew what time the guy left. It's like, oh, it's beautiful. Formal, how do you think Chinatown will play into the Batman?
I would agree with like the detective work. I obviously stylistically, I don't think as much, but I think so I read the pre-novel thing to the Batman. I'm going to say this, based on that book, there's going to be detective work. So I think that part of like the slow pickup of like clues and everything of trying to figure out the end result, I think like that part of Chinatown. I think that's directly going to be involved with it. I think that's the biggest thing. And I mean, it is 2 hours and 50 minutes, so I'm guaranteeing it's going to be a relatively speaking slow burn. Maybe on that note as well. I don't know. We'll see on that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
I think that's exciting for him. Well, if we really don't know what's happening until we get to that final act, I think Matt Reeves would have done a good job. I think that'll make it. You hate going to a picture where you know what's gonna happen, or you know beat for beat how it's gonna play out. So personally, I like being kept on my toes. Amanda, what about you? How do you think this is gonna play into the Batman?
I agree with both of everyone here. Why I don't know why I said both. I agree with everyone here and what it's the detective work for sure.
The both
But
of
sorry, the both of us. Yeah, there's just three of us. Clearly, I need sleep, guys. Jeez. But I think the one thing that hasn't really been covered is the femme fatale, and that is going to be Selena Kyle to Bruce
100%.
Wayne, and that is Faye Dunaway, and she's amazing, and it's so great. And I think that is why, like, I'm just so excited for Zoe, because she's going to play both sides of it. And I think that's going to be awesome for Selena. And I think that's one of the takeaways from Chinatown, that there will be a parallel to that in bringing in the femme fatale in, Gotham, in this world with Bruce Wayne as like film noir elements, as we've talked about. So I think like that's another thing that will parallel for sure.
I love that you brought that up, because I didn't even realize it until this is actually like my third time watching the film, but my first time finishing it. And it's not because I didn't like the film. I just, for whatever reason, I never got around to finishing it. But anyways, long story short, I love that scene where, Jack's getting into a little tussle and these guys are about to like pretty much jump him. And then Faye Dunaway comes screeching along with her car. And then Jack just jumps on the side of the car. He doesn't even get in the car. He just hold on the side like a surfer, and then they just drive away. That felt very like superhero-esque, and like those kind of team ups I'm excited to see if we get that with Zoe Kravitz and Robert Pattinson. I mean, they're both, but aside from the fact that they're just scorching hot, I'm really excited to see them play off of each other as well. The chemistry and them working together. I'm excited to see that. So let's kick it to Dibes, man. What are some favorite moments from this film for you?
The long tracking shot of that orange grove scene was really, really cool. That was a really well done scene. It kind of shocked me about how well that was done. But for me, the ending was terrific, man. It just left me numb. There's just so many things to talk about here, like the message of how at the very end the girl literally just disappears into the dark with her father. Like, it was just really well done. I love the way it was shot too. Like you see kind of like the shot, and then you see the car down the street, and you hear a woman screaming, and then like you're with the character, Jack Nicholson's character, I presume, and you're like approaching the car, and you're like, oh shit, like is she dead? And sure enough, she's dead. And then you start thinking about like what's going to happen to this poor girl, and corruption, society. Money wins, and it is a very thought-provoking scene for me. That was the scene where I was just like watching with Nicole, and I was like, "What?" Like I was not expecting that at all, and it was just really, really memorable.
Oh, definitely, man. And that's just definitely one of the bleakest endings I've seen in a while. And actually, in general, that story is so. Yeah, you guys ever watch South Park? And then Stan goes, "This is pretty fucked up right here." Like that's what I said about halfway through this picture when we figured out what was going on with Faye Dunaway and her daughter / sister, and
madness.
Just a twisted tale.
Personally,
I love that you mentioned the Orange Grove sequence, Dibes, because like it's interesting to feel like anxiety in a broad daylight scene with orange trees, but like he's trying to back up and there's a guy on the horse, and then he goes forward and there's a guys with shotguns, and he turns and he crashes into a tree, and it's like the tension in that scene is so great. What about you, Amanda? What were some of your favorite moments from the film?
This is just shot so well, and it was so inventive for the time as well. I love that he played with the camera. I think for me, it was like majority of any of the detective work. There was one shot with the binoculars and you saw the image within the binoculars, and like it was like focused on him, it was like a close up, but you saw the image within there, and I was like just blown away right from there. And then literally any of the detective work, I thought it was really clever with the way he framed certain scenes. And he just kept you on your toes. Like you're literally watching him, like Polanski, do like all of this work with it, and just following Jack Nicholson, and just like peeling everything back, as we said. And that is like the visual storytelling that comes with Chinatown. I think is really important. So those little moments there, I'm like, yes, golden.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I think he kicks out Faye Dunaway's taillight so he can follow her to where her sister or daughter was. But yeah, he had a lot of like cute, cool little tricks, or like the card he stole from the Department of Water manager, and then he tried to play it off like, oh yeah, I'm here. That's me. I thought that was pretty cool. What about you, Formal? What were some of your favorite moments in Chinatown?
I agree with what everyone else said. Like, I love those moments as well. But I think one of my things that I really love, which also I forgot to mention this in the kind of how it's going to go into Batman, but one of the things is that how Polanski kind of shows these characters has like they're not perfect. Yeah. And like, I mean, that's visually as well. It's not just obviously their backstories and everything, and they have drama, but like, I mean, you kind of touched on it with the bandage on Jack Nicholson's character. Like, he's wearing that, I don't know, like at least 2/3 of the film, and like we know that about him. And then also, if she have Faye Dunaway's character, like she has like the eye problem and stuff like that. So it's like little things like that show visually how these characters are flawed. And there's like other little bits here and there, but I think that also will obviously go into the Batman as well, because obviously based on what the trailers show, he's going to be kind of the, I guess, goth kind of character in this version. So he's obviously, there's a lot of more mental stuff going on, and knowing what we know from the backstory of who Catwoman is and who Bruce is, like these aren't perfect characters either. So I think like that's something that hopefully Matt Reeves will tap into as well. So for me, yeah, when it comes just little things like that like really just add to the characters as a whole.
Awesome.
Love it. And honestly, I mean, almost all of my favorite moments have been mentioned already. I love that, Manda, that you brought up the binocular scene. Polanski is just, I hate or love the guy. He's just really talented. There's also a lot of cool shots he uses with mirrors, where Jack Nicholson is just using a side view mirror or his front mirror, and it's just crazy some of the shots and angles he gets, and while he's tailing someone, or when he was first trying to find what's his name, Mulray, the guy that ends up dying in the water, and there's so many subtle things. It's one of those things where if you notice it, you notice it, but then if you blink, you think Jack Nicholson's just walking, and you missed the shot. But I love the attention to detail. I think that's probably my favorite thing about this picture. And going into overall grades, I want to watch it again. I think the knee-jerk reaction to this film is I do want to give it a 10, but I want to withhold judgment until I kind of like let everything sink in again, and I want to reanalyze some of those shots and details. But I think for now, I'll sit at like a 9.5. What about you, Formal? If you could grade this film overall, what would you grade it?
So, interestingly, when it comes to just like what we talked about, Taxi Driver, in comparison to like what everyone else said, for me, the slow burn on this one was felt just a little bit more, and that's the only thing that like really kind of I think we were mentioning it kind of off screen, was that like it was just it takes a little bit to get going, but then once it gets going, it's really, really good. But I think that little bit is what like kind of holds it back from being like perfect for me, just because I could definitely tell if this movie was longer, or at least it felt like it. And I don't think it's that much longer than Taxi Driver, if I'm remembering correctly.
I don't think so.
Yeah, like it's very, I think, very similar. But anyway, but for that reason alone, like that's why I would just put it down to a 9, though.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's well said. I would say that hour feels long, especially for a 2-hour film. It takes us a while to get going. I want to compare a lot of the water politics, like the farmers were mad their land's not getting irrigated, and then LA is apparently just a desert, and they need to segregate the water to certain places so that the town can live or whatever. And it's funny initially, it's almost like episode 1, The Phantom Menace, where it's like they're talking about trade negotiation, and you're like, where's the lightsabers, right? So I think that's kind of like one of
I
those
feel
things
that.
where it just goes over people's heads, right? But Mando, what about you? What's your overall grade for Chinatown?
Oh, this is tough because, like, on the technical aspects, it's so strong. Like, it's so strong, and the story's great too. I'll give it like an 8.5 out of 10, just because the second watch of Taxi Driver just dropped it from a 10 out of 10 to an 8 for me. So, like, Chinatown, like, visually and the storytelling and how it matches what the story actually is, I just think that it's a bit stronger than Taxi Driver right now. I know. I'm sorry, Marty. I'm sorry.
Bring it home, guys. What's your overall grade for Chinatown?
Like everyone said, for me, it's a 9. Really, really enjoyed this. And this comes from someone who does not like classic film. I'm sorry, I do not. I find it boring. For whatever reason, this really had me sucked in from the jump. It is a slow burn, but I thought the last act of the film was terrific when we started to learn more and more and more about what's going down. I just think from a storytelling perspective, from Jack Nicholson's screen presence, Faye Dunaway, like there's just so much positives in this film. Like I finished Taxi Driver. I'm probably not going to watch that again. I finished Chinatown. I can't wait to watch this again. This is a 9. I really, really enjoyed it. And it's one of those rare movies, old 70s movies that like really held my attention. It doesn't happen often.
I love it.
No, and I love that you mentioned that classicness, especially because like Polanski sets the tone with the title crawl, which is very rare to see in the beginning of a film. It looks like the end of the film, and he uses a sepia tone. And even the font style is like classic. And shouts out Jerry Goldsmith, had an excellent jazzy, like sax heavy score. It was very enjoyable. Looks like we got something pulled up here. Got some scores.
Ooh, damn.
Loretta, you gave it 9.5. So here's our grades for Taxi Driver: 85%, and then Chinatown got an overall of 90%. What does everyone think of that?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's fair.
That feels about right.
Yeah. I mean, they're both great films. We just broke it down. Like, they're both great in their own right. Both directors are fantastic in their own right. They both have like their own style, which we've respected while going through this. But yeah, I think it just comes down to preference at the end of the day. But yeah, that percentage, fair to me.
Yep, I agree.
And you know, Dives, while you have
agreed.
it up, because since this is our final episode of Road to the Batman, I just love looking back, and I feel like there's gonna be bits and pieces of all these films and stories. You know, the grimy, insane clues from Seven, the grittiness of Taxi Driver, the detective work of Zodiac and Chinatown, and obviously the first two are animated Batman pictures with their own stories to tell. I think this is exciting, and I'm glad we did this. Thank you guys for putting this together. Is that you? I think you and Formal were kind of brainstorming, right?
Yes, sir.
You guys nailed it.
It's fun.
That's awesome. All right, so I think about wraps it up. Me and Dive got tomorrow night. Amanda and Formal got the Batman on Thursday.
Ew.
Cannot wait. Formal, what you got going on? What's new? Where can people find you?
You can hit me up on social media. Same thing. It's at the Formal Review. Pretty much just that. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all that. Next coming weeks is just like watching the Oscar films. Don't know which ones I'm going to be doing this week yet. I haven't fully decided, but I may be doing 4 movies this week instead of the normal 3. We'll see what happens. But yeah, I just put out the last 2. So check those out if you want. And then you can listen in for the later ones and then my thoughts on 2021 as a whole.
Awesome, man. Always a pleasure. And Miss Amanda, What's new with you? What you got going on here in
Yeah.
neck of the woods?
Well, I have a video dropping tomorrow, hopefully, that it's going to be my top 5 best live action Batman films. Yeah, I did top 5. That's gonna be problematic as hell, but it's gonna be fun. You can check that out on my YouTube channel, Candid Cinema. I have a couple of reviews dropping, candidxcinema.com, my website, and you can always find me here, always here, and on Twitter, Letterboxd, and Instagram at AMXNDA Reviews.
Awesome. Mr. Crockpot himself. What's going on with us on the Suit Up Geeks channel, man? What we got coming up?
All right. So, well, if I'm not here, you know I'm playing the Elden Ring, which is just one of the most unbelievable games I've ever played, ever. So good. But anyway, for the channel, Thursday night, we have Batman trivia, which will be really, really, really fun. That's going to be a great one. Thursday night at 8 p.m. East Coast time. And then Saturday is our Batman spoiler review. There's no words to express, no words to put that I can do justice to how excited I am for tomorrow. I can't believe it's here. I feel like we've been talking about this movie for years and years and years, and it's finally here. We'll be dropping a kind of a before and after type of video. It'll be a shorter video of just our initial feelings and vibes before the film, and then our quick review as well, in addition to the spoiler review. So that there's a lot.
Oh yeah, can't wait. And for everyone watching, please like and subscribe down below. Please comment on how you like these films, and if you did like this show, we did 2 previous ones. The first one was Mask of the Phantasm versus Batman Year One. We did Seven versus Zodiac, 2 David Fincher films. So please check that out on our channel down below. And yeah, go ahead and follow us on Twitter at the Suit Up Geeks. For Formal, for Amanda, for Dibes, I'm Lo. We'll catch you guys next time. Thank you for watching.